Hello everyone, welcome to my channel, EVS Edge. Today we're diving into some major news that could shake up the global electric vehicle market. The European Union has just announced big taxes on electric cars imported from China, and it's causing quite a stir. So what does this really mean for the future of electric vehicles? Is this the right move or could it backfire? Let's break it down. So what's the big deal? Well, the EU has decided to impose hefty tariffs on electric vehicles imported from China. We're talking about raising the import taxes from 10% to as high as 45% over the next 5 years. Now, why would the EU do this? The reasoning is to protect European car manufacturers who are feeling squeezed by what they call unfair subsidies given to Chinese EV makers by the Chinese government. But wait, does this mean higher prices for electric cars in Europe? And could this spark a trade war between the EU and China? China didn't exactly take this news well. They've called the tariffs protectionist, and they're not happy about it. For them, the EU is a massive market for their electric vehicles. Their economy has been leaning heavily on high-tech exports, and their domestic car industry has grown rapidly over the past 20 years. Brands like BYD and others are pushing hard into international markets. It's possible. If China feels cornered, they could retaliate by imposing their own tariffs on European goods. That's a big risk for industries outside of cars as well. French cognac producers, for example, are already worried they'll face higher taxes in China. But the main concern is whether this is going to make electric vehicles more expensive for European consumers. Think about it. Prices for electric cars are already pretty high. Could these tariffs push them even further out of reach for the average buyer? And here's where things get even more complicated. The EU is divided on this decision. Countries like Germany, which heavily depends on exporting cars to China, were against these tariffs. In fact, companies like Volkswagen are calling this move the wrong approach. But on the flip side, countries like France, Italy, and Poland backed the decision, feeling it's necessary to protect local industries. So where do we go from here? Can the EU and China negotiate their way out of this, or are we headed for an economic clash? Now, let's shift gears and talk about the UK. It's not just the EU that's struggling with the future of electric vehicles. The UK is facing some major hurdles as well. Sure, sales of new electric cars hit a record high in September, but that was mainly due to businesses buying in bulk. The real issue, the average person is still hesitant. Why? Well, EVs are expensive, plain and simple. The average electric car costs about $48,000 in the UK. And then there's the charging infrastructure, or should I say, lack of it. One of the biggest concerns for potential EV buyers in the UK is the availability of charging stations. People are unsure whether they'll have easy access to chargers, especially outside of major cities. It's hard to justify buying an electric car if you're constantly worried about where to charge it, right? Plus, with the government pushing back the deadline to ban petrol and diesel cars to 2035, there's a lot of uncertainty in the air. Will car makers even hit their electric vehicle sales targets? And what happens if they don't? So here's the big question, are electric cars still worth it? Governments are pushing for more electric vehicle adoption, but the high costs and lack of infrastructure are making it tough for everyday consumers. Meanwhile, car makers are struggling to keep up with ambitious zero-emission goals. And with this new tariff battle between the EU and China, the situation might only get more complicated. Could these higher taxes actually slow down the transition to electric cars in Europe? Will consumers pay the price? If we want to see a true electric vehicle revolution, governments need to do more than just set ambitious goals. They need to invest heavily in infrastructure, offer real incentives for buyers, and work with automakers to make EVs more affordable. Otherwise, we could see more people sticking with petrol and diesel longer than we thought. What do you guys think? Is the EU making the right move with these tariffs, or are we heading towards a trade war? And what about the UK? Do you think the government is doing enough to support electric cars? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. What if you enjoyed this video? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss an update. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.